मैं वंदना आप सबका यूपीएससी टाइम में स्वागत करती हूँ। आज की वीडियो में हम प्रीवियस वीडियो का ही लेक्चर 2 देखने वाले हैं। प्रीवियस चैप्टर का ही लेक्चर 2 है, द मेकिंग ऑफ ग्लोबल वर्ल्ड। नाउ लेट्स स्टार्ट द चैप्टर। बिफोर स्टार्टिंग द चैप्टर, आई एम गिविंग टू एडवाइस टू यू, प्लीज चेक आउट द प्रीवियस वीडियो which will find you in a playlist of this channel. Now start the video. A well-known pioneer of mass production was the car manufacturer Henry Ford. He adapted the assembly line, Chicago slaughterhouse, in which slaughtered animals were picked by a part which is as they came down a conveyor belt to his new car plant in Detroit. The assembly line method allow faster and cheaper way of production vehicle. The assembly line forced worker to repeat a single task mechanically and continuously, such as fitting a particular part to the car at a pace dictated by the conveyor belt. This was way of increasing the output per worker by speeding up the pace of worker. Standing in front of conveyor belt, no worker could afford to delay the motion, take a break, or even have a friendly word with a workmate. The T model Ford was a world first mass produced car. At first, workers at a Ford factory were unable to cope with the stress of working on assembly line in which they could not control the pace of worker, so they quit in a large number. In a depression, Ford doubled the daily wages to $5 in a January 1914. At the same time, he banned trade union from the operating in his plants. Henry Ford recovered the highways by speeding up the production line and forcing workers to work ever harder, so much that he decided to double the daily wages as the best cost-cutting decision he had ever made. Mass production lowered cost and prices were lightened good. Due to the higher wage, more workers could now afford the purchase durable consumer goods such as car production in US rose from 2 million in 1919 to more than 5 million in 1929. Similarly, there was a spurt in the purchase of refrigerator, washing machine, radios, gramophone player, although a system of hire purchase on a credit repaid in a weekly or monthly installment. The demand for refrigerator, washing machine, etc. was also fueled by a boom in house construction and home ownership financed by the loan. The Great Depression began around 1929 and lasted till date mid-1930s. During this period, most part of the world experienced decline in production, employment, income, and trade. The agriculture region and the communities were the worst affected because of fall in agriculture prices was greater than most prolonged than in prices of industrial goods. The exact timing and the impact of depression varied across the countries. The depression was caused by a combination of several factors. First, agriculture overproduction remained a problem, which was made worse by falling agriculture prices as the prices slumped and agriculture income declined. Farmers tried to expand production and bring a larger volume of production to market to maintain their overall income. This worsened and glut in the market, pushing down the prices even further. Farm produce rotated for a lack of buyers. Second, in the mid-1920s, many countries financed their investment through loans from the US. While it was often extremely easy to raise loans in the US when the going was good, the US overseas lender panicked at the first sign of trouble. Countries that depended exclusively on a US loan now faced an acute crisis. The withdrawal of US loan affected much of the rest of the world in different ways. In Europe, it led to a failure of some major banks and the collapse of currencies such as British pound sterling. In Latin America and elsewhere, it intensified the slump in agriculture and raw material prices. The US attempt to protect its economy in a depression by doubling import duties also gave a severe blow to the world trade. The withdrawal of US loan affected much of the rest of the world in a different ways. The US was more severely affected by the depression with the fall of prices. In the prospect of depression, US bank has also slashed domestic lending and callback loan. Farm could not sell their harvest, household were ruined and the business collapsed. Faced with the failing income, many households in the US could not repay what they had borrowed and were forced to give up their homes, cars, and other consumer durable. As unemployment soared, people traveled long distances looking for any work for could find. Colonial India had become an exporter of agricultural goods and importer of manufacture. The depression affected Indian trade. Indian export and import nearly halved between 1928 to 34 as international prices crashed. Prices in India also plunged between 1928 to 34. Wheat prices in India fell by 50%. Peasant and farmer suffered more than urban dweller. Though agriculture prices fell sharply, the colonial government refused to reduce revenue demand. Peasant producing for world market were worth it. The jute producer of Bengal grew raw jute that was processed in a factory for export in the form of gunny bags. But as gunny export collapsed, the prices of raw jute crashed more than 60%. Peasant who borrowed in a hope of better time or to increase output in a hope of higher income faced over low price and fell deeper and deeper into the debt. Thus, the Bengal jute grower lament, grow more jute, brother, with the hope of greater cash. Cost and depth of jute will make you hope get dashed even when you have spent all your money and got the crop off the ground. The Second World War broke out of 2 decades after the end of World War. It was a fight between the Axis power, mainly Nazi Germany, Japan, and Italy, and the alliance Britain, France, and Soviet Unions and the US. It was a war waged for 6 years on many fronts, in a many places over land, on a sea, in there. Once again, death and destruction was enormous. At least 60 million people, or about 3% of the world 1939 population, are delivered to have been killed directly or indirectly as a result of war. Million more were injured. Economists and politicians drew two key lessons from the interwar economic experience. First, an industrial society based on a mass production cannot be sustained without a mass consumption. To ensure mass consumption, there was a need for a high stable income. Income could not be stable if employment was unstable. Thus, stable income also requires steady full employment. But market alone could not guarantee full employment. Therefore, government would have to step in to minimize fluctuation of price, output, and employment. Economic stability could be ensured only through the intervention of a government. The Bretton Woods Conference established the International Money Fund to deal with the external surplus and deficit of its member nation. The International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, properly known as the World Bank, as set up to finance post-war reconstruction. The IMF and the World Bank are referred to as a Bretton Woods institution or a Bretton Woods twins. The post-war international economic system is described as the Bretton Woods system. Despite years of stable and rapid growth, not all well. This post-war world, from the 1960s, the rising cost of overseas improvement weakened the U.S. finance and competitive strength. The U.S. dollar now no longer command confidence as a world principal currency. It could not maintain its value in relation to gold. This eventually led to collapse to a system of fixed exchange rate and the introduction of system of floating exchange rate. From the mid 1970s, the international financial system changed in important ways. Earlier developing countries could turn to international institutions for loan and development assistance, but now they were forced to borrow from Western commercial bank and private lending institutions. This led to periodic debt crisis in a developing world and low income and increased poverty, especially in Africa and Latin America. The industrial world also hit by unemployment that began rising from the mid 1970s to remained high until the early 1990s. China had been cut off from the post-war world economy since its revolution in 1949, but new economic policy in China and the collapse of the Soviet Union and Soviet-style communism in Eastern Europe brought many countries back into the fold of the world economy. Wages were relatively low flow in countries like China became attractive destination for investment by foreign MNCs competing to capture world market. The relocation of industry to low wages countries stimulated world trade and capital flow. In the last 2 decades, the world economic geography has been transformed as countries such as India, China, Brazil have undergone rapid economic transformation. The MNCs were established in 1920. Many more come up in the 1950s, 60s as US business expanded worldwide, and Western Europe and Japan also recovered to become a powerful industrial economy. The worldwide spread of MNCs was a notable feature of the 50s to 60s. This was partially because high import tariffs imposed by different government forced MNCs to locate their manufacturing open and become domestic production in as many countries as possible. With this slide, this chapter is complete. If you have query in this chapter or related to subject, then you can ask in the comment box. And if you like this video, then hit the like button. If you are new in this channel, then press the subscribe button and press the bell icon and stay tuned with this channel. Thanks for watching the video.